Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube for the latest episode of Broncos Now. As always, I'm your host, Sydney Jones. And coming up on today's episode, we'll take a look back at Sunday's loss in Houston. We'll hear from head coach Sean Payton and several players, plus Broncos lead writer Eric Delala joins the show for a game recap. All that and more coming up. With Sunday's 22-17 loss in Houston, the Denver Broncos now sit at 6-6, but still remain in the playoff hunt. We heard from head coach Sean Payton today as he detailed his message to the team this morning.
I think they all stink. The losses do. They feel that way. They're just disappointing. I think what I said to the team a little bit earlier was, you're going to play 17 games, and man, are you going to be gunpowder ready for each one of those? I'm not so sure that you are. And yet yesterday's a game, despite how poorly we started, you're going to be frustrated when you watch the tape and you see the multiple opportunities we have. But we let a guy run free, early in the game on a punt rush. Defensively, we're off the field in in a red zone situation. We let a rookie bait us into a personal foul. That's 4 points. Instead of finishing that game, needing a touchdown, we're kicking a field goal to win. Offensively, we talked about it, the communication. It has to improve, especially on the road. Too many snaps where guys aren't ready, or we didn't get the shift, or we didn't get the call. And that's troubling, especially this time of the year.
Both center Lloyd Cushenberry and safety PJ Locke also spoke to the media today, and they added to that by detailing the team's resiliency as they look ahead to the remainder of the season.
All year long, we said, we're a tough group, a resilient group, and we've shown that, like you just said. In the next 5 games, man, we got to, let's put up or shut up. We got to come out with all of these wins to get in the playoffs, and once you get in, it's 0-0. Anything can happen. So we look forward to that challenge and getting it done.
Just going through that type of adversity at the beginning of the season. You've been through it. You know how it felt. You know the type of mentality you got to have to get out of that situation, get out of that hole. And we showed fight in the game. And honestly, man, I'm really not worried. Obviously, I'm disappointed that we lost. We ended the streak that we had, but I'm not worried by any means, just because, like I said, we, as bad as we played and it still came down to game-winning drive, man, that's amazing, and those type of games when you -3 in takeaways and, those type of things is, most time you getting beat down. And just for it to come down to game-winning drive, man, and, we were 8 yards away from winning the game. That's huge. And, all the things that we see on film, man, it's correctable. And so, like I said, I'm not worried, man. I feel like we're heading in the right direction, and we get those things fixed up, we'll be just fine. We'll be just fine.
And looking at the offense's performance versus the Texans, both head coach Sean Payton and Lloyd Cushenberry talked today about the team's inability to convert on 3rd down in Houston.
No, it's not good enough. Obviously, it's frustrating. It's a combination of a handful of things: protection, guys open, us not making a play. But I felt like the yardage, the distances were what we wanted. And yet, we've got to be better in that area. Our 3rd down plan, obviously, is got to be cleaner. But it wasn't a game where so many of them were 3rd and long.
I think we got to, up front, we got to give them a little bit more time to see things on the field. That's what we didn't do yesterday. So that's how I see it. I try to look inward at myself and our group. So that's what I think we can do.
They also spoke on what the keys will be to being more productive in the passing game.
Look, I think there's probably a combination of 2 or 3 things. I think it starts with protection. I think the communication's got to be on point. We finished the game yesterday. The last play of the game, we leave a shift off. And so at the snap of the ball, you have 3 receivers that are trying to run a route, but they haven't shifted into their final formation. So my experience has always been it's the details. It's the little things, and those things have to be better.
I think it all starts with us up front. We got to give rushing our playmakers more time. Got to have them more comfortable in the pocket. There's times where pocket wasn't good enough, so it all starts with us up front and making sure he's able to see things down the field, and we got to be better for him.
Plus, PJ Locke spoke on Denver's defensive struggles in the first half.
Yeah, I mean, we had few communication issues. I don't know. We just I feel like we just kind of played sloppy in the first half. And those led to big plays. I mean, even though we did pretty good on third down, the ones they had on third down were, for the most part, big plays. And, you can't, one of our, team goals or defensive goals was to eliminate the passing game, the big plays in the passing game. And, we didn't do that. We gave up like 5 explosives. So, anytime you do that, it's going to be hard to win. Nico Collins is a great receiver. And I want to say he went 9 catches for 191, something like that. And, 3 of those catches was like for 151. So, you can never win like that. We're going to put ourselves in a big hole. And that's what we did. I mean, we kind of dug out of it a little bit, but, we didn't do it just enough to win the game. So, we just can't do that.
Now joining me here inside the Broncos podcast studio for a game recap is Broncos lead writer Eric DeLalla. Eric, thanks for joining me today.
Got it, Sid.
Yep. How we doing? How we feeling?
Good. Nice to be back in Denver.
Nice to be back. Yep. Exactly.
The road trip continues this week, but got to get back to work, got to clean some things up, and got to find a way to bounce back after a tough loss yesterday.
Certainly. Yeah, Eric, we've talked a lot this season about the turnover margin, how important it is to win that in these games. And, we saw this team do that throughout that 5-game win streak. But, the Broncos, they finished -3 in that category on a Sunday. And I feel like that was a big reason why they weren't able to get the win in Houston.
Yeah, definitely. Certainly the Broncos turnovers themselves were a big reason. The tipped interception that essentially gives Houston a free touchdown there was a big one. The Broncos were able to battle back from the second interception. The defense comes up with another stop. And then obviously the interception in the end zone at the end of the game ends things.
Right.
And there was that big swing where Jaquan McMillan forces a fumble from C.J. Stroud, a strip sack, and Jonathan Cooper's kind of got the ball in his hands, and somehow it's got a weird spin on it. It squirts free. They're not able to get it. And again, right after that is when Russell Wilson throws his first interception that leads to points. So instead of worst case scenario, it's 16-13, even if the Broncos just kick a field goal there. Maybe they score a touchdown and go up 17-16, taking over around the 30-yard line. Instead of that, they punt it away. Russ throws the pick. And a few plays later, I believe it's 23-10. So you're right back in that 13-point hole. The turnovers had an impact certainly on the game. What I will say is that there's been talk about, hey, this defense cannot win games without takeaways. And what I saw from the team is that after a first half and really a first quarter where there were some coverage breakdowns, the Texans hit some big plays, I think a pair of 50-plus yard passes in the first quarter. After that, they really settled down. And, in the second half, forced 4 punts, got pressure on C.J. Stroud, brought some creative blitzes, got after him a little bit. And they didn't need takeaways to have a good solid performance.
Right.
Now, certainly a short field, I think, would have helped given the struggles the Broncos offense had at times. But they did their job even without the takeaways. And so in some ways, I was really encouraged by the defensive performance in the second half because that's a good offense, especially throwing the ball. They've had a lot of success. And the Broncos showed that even without takeaways, they were able of slowing them down and limiting them to few points there, in the late stages of the game. So I was impressed from that aspect of the defensive performance, even without the takeaways. But offensively, certainly, Russell Wilson said after the game, I've got to be cleaner. I've got to play cleaner football. And if you turn the ball over 3 times, it's going to be hard to make that up.
Definitely, yeah. Defense certainly kept them in the game. Eric, focusing on offense here, I know there was a lot of talk today just about the team's, really their inability to convert on third down in Houston. So what did you see kind of in terms of that, and what do you think will be key to kind of turning that around? Yeah,
it was interesting that it wasn't like they were in third and long a lot. It actually was a lot of manageable third down situations, and yet they go 0 of 11. I think Sean Payton said it well on Sunday that there's several different reasons why it happened. There's some times where maybe there's communication breakdown, there's pressure, The ball doesn't go where it needs to go. A couple of times the Broncos ran the ball on kind of these thirds and shorts and weren't able to convert there. Yeah. And then other times, later in the game, especially, the Broncos knew they had 2 plays, so kind of used a third down to get just a little bit closer. But the Broncos' execution just has to be better there. Sean Payton said the third down plan needs to be better. They need to spend more time on that and make sure it's up to the standard they need it to be at. They've got to be certainly 0 of 11. It would have been remarkable if the Broncos could have won the football game despite being 0 of 11 on third down. So that's got to be better. And you've got to find a way to sustain drives. Even when the Broncos scored yesterday, it was chunk plays, right? It was the long one to Cortland Sutton. It was a 41-yard pass to Jerry Jeudy, and then a quick sneak by Russell Wilson. There wasn't the sustained drives that we're used to seeing with this team. And listen, there's going to be games where you struggle, but you've got to find a way to grind out some drives, and I'm sure third down will be a big point of emphasis this week.
Yeah, Eric, there was also, pass protection was a big topic of conversation today too. And, we've seen kind of some inconsistencies from the offensive line in that regard throughout the season. But what did you see from them on Sunday?
Yeah, well, Will Anderson just played a really good game.
Yeah, he did.
He's a talented kid, top 3 pick for a reason. Yeah. He kind of set the tone early with that deflected punt, and then, obviously has a couple of sacks, a lot of quarterback hits, hurries. He was all over the place. I think if you look at how Russ played and how the passing game in general went, when the Broncos used play action, it actually was very efficient. I think Russ's passer rating was like 140 something, and had a bunch of yards, had the touchdown. That kind of makes sense, right? When you think about what the Broncos do well, which is run the football, and then if you can simulate that, and maybe it's Javonte helping out as an extra guy to double team one of the better edge rushers and make a clean pocket that Russ can step up in and throw. That's where the Broncos had success. So we'll see. I would think the Broncos try to improve on what we saw yesterday. It would involve getting back to the ground game, some of that play action passing. And, there are times where Sean Payton talked about the pocket breaks down too quickly. There's other times where it's okay, but maybe Russ gets outside a little bit too early. So it's not just one thing to point to. I think Mike McGlinchey said it well when he mentioned that all 11 guys on offense have to be better in order to succeed. And certainly yesterday wasn't up to the standard that they want to be at.
Yeah. Eric, I know head coach Sean Payton, he described the game yesterday as sloppy in his terms. And, I think he contributed a lot of that just to lack of communication. So, with 3 road games still remaining on the schedule here, how important is that to just get that all ironed out?
Yeah, they've got to figure it out. And I don't know exactly what the process is there, spending time on it in practice, simulating the crowd noise, making sure, just buttoned up in terms of making the calls, those sorts of things. But yeah, Sean Payton did say it's a little troubling at this point in the year that you're still having those issues, but got to find a way to fix it in fast, right? Because you've got a road game this week that, in terms of the AFC playoff standings, it's pretty much a must win. The Broncos have not won an AFC West road game in several years, so they've got to find a way to buck that trend, communicate well from a protection standpoint, if it's with the receivers, making sure they know, what's the shift, what's the motion on this play. And just being in a good spot there. Now, what I will say is that the Broncos got better as the game went along and they fought back. And, had that game gone another 10, 15 minutes, it would not surprise me to see the Broncos come out on top. I think, the Texans went up 10-0 by the end of the first quarter, and the Broncos just put themselves in too big of a hole to come back from. But I think as the game went along, the Broncos outscored the Texans there in the second half. And they were just able to find more success both defensively and offensively, even if it still wasn't perfect. And so part of me just wonders, was it something about the early kick that it just, had an impact? But certainly, got another kick this coming week that's 1 p.m. local time. It'll feel like 2 o'clock back here, but you've got to find a way to be ready to go. And, just kind of as we talk about the offense here, the second half starts obviously a big thing too, right? Where the Broncos have scored just once on their opening drive of the second half. Sean Payton's considering putting in a script that he builds at halftime just to try to help with the efficiency there. But they got to find a way to get going, and points they're at a premium here in the month of December, and Broncos have to find a way to get a few more of them.
Yeah, as head coach Sean Payton said, the margin of error is pretty slim now with just 5 weeks remaining. So, Eric, what do you think mindset or just mentality is for the rest of the season? Not that many games left.
Not that many games left. 5 games left. I think it's good, and I think the schedule, it's all about, I think overall it's favorable enough, and you look at the schedule and you think, okay, the Broncos probably need to go 4-1 here to make the playoffs,
right.
and they probably, can't afford for one of those losses to be to an AFC team. And so basically, it's either go 5-0 or lose in Detroit. Maybe, obviously hope that doesn't happen, and the Broncos go 5-0 and put it out of the hands of the tiebreak. But none of that can happen unless you go out and you win this one. And it's, again, a divisional road game, which the Broncos haven't won since 2019.
Right.
It's a talented team still, and we'll talk much more about them later in the week. But the Broncos just have to be at their best. And if you get this one, and then maybe you go and you find a way to upset Detroit, because I'm sure that'll be a crazy environment, a Saturday night game.
Sure.
Can you then come back for this last 3-game stretch and you get the Patriots at home, get the Chargers at home? Can you find a way to get to 9-7 through that stretch even, and then just have kind of that last week against the Raiders. And hopefully get a win and put yourself in contention.
Yeah.
But a lot of this is, again, looking ahead, right? You've got to make sure that guys, I think, still have the confidence they need, which is good.
Yeah.
We've talked about this. We talked about it yesterday. Despite playing about as poorly as they possibly could on offense at times, despite the first half struggles on defense, they still had a chance from the 8-yard line, 3 chances from the 8-yard line to win this football game. And so I think that can help a team's confidence almost.
For
that
sure. They could have won this game.
Yeah, we didn't play anywhere near our ability, and yet we were still in it.
Yeah.
And so if we do play,
that's a good point.
Even it doesn't even have to be perfect, but just better, up to our standard, you're going to be in position to win these football games. But despite that confidence, they now have to go do it.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. They'll have a full week of practice here before they head out to LA. Eric, appreciate you joining the show.
You got it, Sid.
Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Broncos Now. Broncos Country, thanks so much for tuning in. I'll meet you right back here on the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube tomorrow for another episode. I will see you all then.